So we have now called it Peace and Friendship Park to memorialize the Indigenous people. So Cornwall was being sent here by the British. It came with about 2,500 to 3,000 settlers. And the British chose this area, Halifax, simply because of our harbor. We have the second largest natural ice-free harbor in the world, second only to Sydney, Australia. It was started in 1749, closed in 1844 because it was full. 1,700 grave markers, 1,200 grave markers, 12,000 bodies are buried there. One body of note buried there, Major General Robert Ross. He was a blue-eyed Irish officer in the British Army during the War of 1812. He was sent to Washington to burn public buildings. That's how the White House got its name, was he burned. And then he was sent off to Baltimore to do the exact same thing. Before he got to Baltimore, he was killed by a sniper. The royal family would attend whenever they're in Halifax. And I will be talking about the Halifax explosion later on. And there is a piece of the ship embedded in that church. On the left-hand side here, this is Parade Square. Originally, it was always for military purposes. Now it's ceremonies, for example, Remembrance Day. It arrived in 1803, 3 years late. So much for punctuality, right? In 2011, we hosted the Canada Winter Games. That was the skating rink, and now we can skate there for free. Even if you don't have skates, you can borrow a pair from the city, and I mean borrow, not rent. Borrow. On the left-hand side, there is an absolutely beautiful skateboard park. The youth of the city love that skateboard park. I don't know if it was by to speak this language. The blue represents the sea, the sky, and our numerous lakes. We have 5,400 in our small little province. The white represents the foam on the sea. The green represents the relationship with the Titanic. Basically, the Titanic went down about 300 miles off the coast of Newfoundland, which is a province in Canada. Halifax is about 700 to 750 miles away from where the Titanic sank. So the White Star Line, there were three real reasons why the Titanic went down. First of all, lifeboats. In 1912, the number of lifeboats they had to have on board the ship had to do with the tonnage, not the number of passengers. 19 bodies are buried in the Catholic Mount Olivet Cemetery, and 10 bodies are buried in the private Baron de Hirsch Jewish Cemetery. So the White Star Line needed to have some way of getting out there and making some identifications and whatnot. So this is what they did. They hired what's called cable vessels. Cable vessels were used to being out on the cold North Atlantic because they actually laid the cables that connected North America to Europe. Then, with the cable vessels, captain and crew, they took out members of the coroner's office and members of various religions. The Titanic hit the iceberg at 11:40 the night of April the 14th. Less than 3 hours later, at 2:20 on the morning of April the 15th, the Titanic went down. Is of where the Titanic sank and its voyage. So, started here, 3 areas I told you about, sank there, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New York. It was heading to New York. Started here, sunk, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New York. That was the final destination. numbers on the grave markers, they are not sequential. There are 3 burial sites in Halifax, and it also, the numbering system also really depended on when information was received from the families. If they decided that a family member was going to be repatriated, that had to be paid for by the family. So the first person we talk about is William Gotti. So he was the 313th body that was pulled out of the water. He was a restaurateur. He was an Italian, and he was the manager of the Ritz restaurant for first-class passengers only. And he was last seen on the deck with his top hat on, a travel blanket over his arm. He was identified because of one little thing. He had a tiny little teddy bear in his pocket that was given to him for good luck by his 4-year-old son, Victoria. Death, April the 15th, 1912. And the body number, for example, Luigi Gotti, 313. That's all the White Star Line would pay for. They did not. And even those that were buried at sea, there are some that say that it was the Yahas. They couldn't identify them. That could have been possible as well. So come on up closer. I'm going to talk about this one here. We have a lot of people in the back and I'd like you to come up closer. I don't want you to be left behind. So Ernest Edward Samuel Freeman. What's his body number? 239? Yeah, 239. His body number is 239. He was listed as a deckhand. Now, even though he was listed as a deckhand, he was Bruce Ismay's private valet, personal valet. So, that's how Bruce Ismay, I told you I was going to tell you about Bruce Ismay. Bruce Ismay, the chairman of the White Star Line. So this is the one that was being prepared. Bruce Ismay identified. So if everyone would be able to go all the way up. And I know that someone's going to ask me, there's a grave marker here for J.W. Marriott. We do not believe it has anything to do with the Marriott hotel chain. 1910, moved to Chicago, and he became a tram operator. He saved money because he couldn't find any work in England, so he moved. I should have touched those. We got to anglicize the P-A-U-L-S-O-S. So I'm going to go in the middle. Move around a little bit, please. That would be great. So at least we have to give them an opportunity to see everything too. Bottom, that I think is number 3 and 8 or 3 and 6, something like that. They have their names on, and it's on the front of it because in 1991 the Titanic Society had identified them simply because they were the only people that had the initials, and the initials were sewn onto their undergarments. So number 3 and number 8 down here. So, see this large Celtic cross? That was from an Australian. He was a millionaire. He was heading to central Canada to meet up with friends. He had mining interests in both South Africa and Russia. Why the family did not choose to have his body repatriated back to Australia, we don't know. But they paid for the largest headstone of any of our graves. So the last grave marker I'm going to talk about is the one over here. This little angel. For Mr. J. Dawson, body number 227 that was pulled out of the water. Mr. J. Dawson was Mr. Joseph Dawson. He was a coal trimmer. He worked in the bowels of the ship. He actually trimmed the coal, chopped it up to feed to the furnace. And whenever James Cameron made up the film, he came here several times. He identified this person as Leonardo DiCaprio's character, yes. So there's no way on this beautiful green earth that a coal trimmer could have gotten up to first class. We're talking Edwardian era, very strict rules of class. There's no way in the world he could have gotten up there, but you can do anything when you make a film. So when the 1997 film was done up, James Cameron came here several times just to check out different things, and that's why he made that depiction. Then we have like this area here is where they figure that was it hit the iceberg, so no grave markers would be there. So we're going to head back to the bus. We're going to go this way. Specifically to the tragic loss of 5 men from the then sparsely populated island of Barra, Scotland. The 5 men, all members of the Merchant Marine, were working on the SS Curacao, which was tied up at Pier 8 in Halifax Harbour. They were loading horses destined for the Canadian and British forces overseas. During World War I, when the explosion occurred, Michael McNeil, Donald H. McKinnon, Donald S. McKinnon, Malcolm McLean, and Donald Campbell were killed instantly. And the bodies of these men, ages 19 to 25, were never recovered. Strong, age-old ties exist between Barra, Scotland, and Nova Scotia to this day. This tragic event is painfully remembered in both Nova Scotia and Barra.